But they didn't know about all the hell I had to go through to get to that moment. It's staying with the process. Why not me? Being at your best when your best is required, stepping into the fear, and doing things that you don't think are possible. Do it with daily discipline. Great things can happen.
Hey everyone, Dave Menz with another great episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show coming to you from Cincinnati, Ohio. And this episode is going to be a little bit unique and a little bit different in the sense of a lot of our laundromat episodes that we do. We have a really unique guest with us today that we're honored that he took the time to join us. And we're just going to dive into his life story and his journey of entrepreneurship and business. And there is so much in here. I can't imagine we can possibly pack all this into one episode, but we're going to do our best. Carla, do you want to introduce our guest today?
Yes, I am so excited to talk to our guest today. Our guest today is Mark Pattison. He is a former NFL player, philanthropist, podcaster, successful entrepreneur, and is currently an executive at Sports Illustrated. In addition to his business journey, Mark has climbed all 7 summits, having completed this feat by scaling the death-defying Mt Everest in the spring of 2021. Mark dedicated his climb to his daughter, Amelia, who is overcoming her own Everest by defeating epilepsy. So, Mark, thank you for coming to our show. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm jacked to be on this podcast. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
You know, Mark, I know you've been through a lot in your life, but I'm thinking this might be the pinnacle of your life. Being on the Laundromat Millionaire Show.
Yeah, let me tell you, this is the Mount Everest.
This is the Mount Everest.
right here.
Oh, yeah. No, I appreciate you flattering us. That's very kind of you. So listen, what we like to do is just jump right in if it's okay with you. Can you, I want to get into all your life story as an adult real quick, but before we do, tell us a little bit about you as kind of an upbringing and a child and what kind of molded you into what you are today, who you are today.
Yeah, I think that's an important question. And, we always look back on life and I think a lot of that question right there really defines who we are. And certainly there's been a lot of moments from my background. I grew up in Seattle. I just heard you guys are in Cincinnati.
We are.
And Seattle, for those who've not been up there, is a very mountainous community, a lot of water. It sits right on the Pacific Ocean up there. And the left-hand corner of the United States is it's shaped up, right? And there's a lot of mountains up there. And so spent a lot of time when I was younger, spending every single hour I possibly could with a ball in my hand, mainly a football. And lived on a playground, like literally my back fence was the fence of the playground. So I'd climb over the fence every night. My mom would just open the door and yell dinner and I'd run home. Seattle is also very wet. And so I spent a ton of time out there in a t-shirt and under the rain. It just didn't bother me. I just grew up in those types of conditions. And then during the summer, both my parents were teachers. So very humble beginnings. I didn't get on a plane until my first recruiting trip, if you can imagine that.
Really?
And and so I spent a lot of the summers climbing just little things. There's a lot of mountains. They're nothing spectacular except for Mount Rainier. That's kind of our crown jewel up there, 14,500 feet. But overall, I think it was just a great experience to grow up, not only in an area that really taught me about the outdoors, but also a very entrepreneurial community. Starbucks, Microsoft, Expedia, Boeing. I mean, I could go on and on. There's been so many companies, Zillow, they've all been birthed, out of the great state of Washington and really Seattle. And so it kind of helped open my eyes a little bit to what, the world of possibilities.
And those would have been in the middle of your, I'm trying to think of timelines for when all these tech companies, which as I refer to them as that, when they would have been created, would have been what, 25 years ago, ballpark?
Yep. So you're talking about, a lot of them were in the late 80s, early 90s and into 2000. And of course, with the internet that just, created a whole nother layer. But Starbucks, I mean, back in the day, there's a Starbucks in every corner in Seattle. And so you just, it gets at times so dark and gray and dreary that you just need a caffeine hit. So you're running across the street and
then you need to go climb a mountain, right?
And then you go climb a mountain. Exactly. So no, but that, it was really amazing when you take a look at the landscape of companies that were started, certainly down in Silicon Valley, just kind of in that Stanford community. You've got a lot of companies that were formed and they're still forming, but they just, Bill Gates just happened to grow up. Paul Allen happened to grow up and go to high school, down the street, live in our neighborhood, just people like that. It's just like, it's just a stroke of luck on where you guys are in the mid part of the country and somewhere on the east and somewhere on the west. And that's where I happen to grow up.
Yeah.
So were you always entrepreneurial, or did those types of dreams and aspirations happen after your football career?
No, my grandfather really opened my eyes. And so again, going back to your first question is, what was your childhood like? My grandfather was very involved in the hotel business. He had a couple of hotels. He had some restaurants. He was really more known as a restaurateur. He later in life got into horse racing. And so it just took a bird's eye view of taking the step back. And I think what really opened me up to like really big business is when I got drafted by the Raiders in 1985. It went down, and the Raiders back in those days was controlled and run by Al Davis, kind of a crazy owner. And just seeing big money and guys pulling in and Rolls Royces and the celebrities on the sideline, and it's just like, I was living a different life for sure, but I was just really open to the idea that all things are possible, that you don't just have to, be born and raised, nothing wrong with what I'm about to say, but born and raised and go to work for the company down the street or the coal mine or whatever. You can actually go pursue some of your different dreams. And so that's what really opened my eyes.
That's a fantastic point that I don't know that I've given a whole lot of thought to in the past. And it's just that a lot of times we do grow up and we go to school and we get a degree and we get a job at the accounting firm or a middle manager position at the local phone company or whatever, which is where I worked for a while. And I think a lot of people just, I'll speak for me personally, that I kind of settled for a while in corporate America. And if you've never like been able to take a step back and look at this lens of like, wow, look how big the world is and look at all the opportunities out here. I think a lot of people just get up every morning, go to work, go to bed that night, get up again the next morning, and not ever take the time to like open their eyes and look around and be like, well, who do I want to be and what do I want to do with my life? Next thing you know, they blink their eyes, they're retired. And that's life. So that's pretty cool that at a pretty young age you got to observe that from a man. I mean, they can get much bigger in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question, but you don't have to go to the NFL. I think it just really gets down to your mindset, and the NFL helped me create that mindset of thinking big, and I've used this before too, which is why not me, right? And when I can remember when I was in my rookie year when I was sitting in this room, there was 150 guys, and at the end of the day, only 55 guys could make the NFL team. And Tom Flores, the old coach, was up there and he was standing, he was talking, he was going, "Hey guys, I know this is, we're all having fun in the room right now, but just understand this, more than half of you will not be sitting in this room in 2 months." And so I was looking around, and, I was coming into a team that had gone to the Super Bowl the year before. And I was like, I don't know who you're talking about, but it's not me. And it really opened my eyes to this question of why not me? Like, why can't I climb Mount Everest? Why can't I do the 7 summits? Why can't I start my own company? Right. And so often the only limitation to your personal greatness, the best version of yourself is yourself, because you have limiting thoughts about how far you can go based on your education. And I just learned at a young age is that I'm not going to have other people put caps. And trust me, when I was a freshman at the University of Washington, I was a scholarship player, but I went from kind of being a star in high school to being low man on the totem pole. And I was skinny, and I was just in over my head. I just had really no business being out there. And it really took a tremendous amount of work, which took me 2 or 3 years to get there. But I could remember some alumni, I still remember this like it was yesterday, standing behind me. I overheard them say that I was such a waste of a scholarship, right? And so again, other people creating limiting beliefs. And so it's just really locking in. When I got in the NFL, I had a good friend of mine come up and say, "You'll never make the NFL." Like, why would your friend say that? But they did. I know a lot of people. I had people coming up to me just a year ago about Mount Everest, like, looking at me like, "Why are you doing Mount Everest? You're going to die." I'm like, "Why do I have to die? Why can't I be the guy to go up there and do this? I'm the first NFL player."
Where did that come from? I mean, you talk about your grandpa? It sounds like he was a mentor to you in a lot of ways. If nothing else, you looked up to him. Where did you? I mean, were you just born with like, "Why not me"? Some people are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exposure to the people. I think it's having some success in certain things. I don't think I was just more happy-go-lucky, you know, when I was younger. But, you know, I think the kind of where are you going to choose door one or door two really kicked in my freshman year, my freshman year at the University of Washington, which is I was on the track of going nowhere. I mean, I wasn't doing well in school. I wasn't doing well on the football team. I really had never worked at something. I mean, like hardcore, to go into a whole different level. And I was a rock star in the fraternity, right? And so my priorities were all whacked out, and you know, they weren't in the right order. And so I made this hard decision, you know, like, you know what, I'm not going to quit. And I made some hard decisions in that time. I moved out of the fraternity, a great place, but not a place for me to live. I moved back home with my parents. I got serious about my studies, and I just completely dedicated. And the interesting thing about that, and this is where people give up so often, is that even though I had to do all this stuff, get bigger, faster, stronger, all the things on the board, get good grades, stay eligible, learn the plays, do all that kind of stuff. Even though I did that, and even though I was at it on the scout team for 2 years, getting the heck, you know, just pounded out of me, there was no certainty that if I did A, B, and C, that D would happen. Like I'd ever get on the field. But you put yourself in the best positions of success when you do the work and you make the preparation. And that's the whole thing. You know, John Wooden has this whole quote about be your best when your best is required. And so in this example, I mean, I spent so many dark years at the University of Washington in the very beginning. I was there for 5 years because I redshirted for a year. And I finally get my opportunity. We're playing Michigan, and we're playing Michigan in Seattle. And so they come out, it was a sold out 67,000 people, the most people they'd ever had in that stadium, a standing room only. And we're down by 14 points. I'm playing in this game. And in the fourth quarter, we mount this comeback. We score a touchdown. And now with about 2 minutes to go, we get the ball back. And as we march down the field, we went 80 yards. And with about, I don't know, 20 seconds, 19 seconds, something like that, my number gets called. And I catch this pass over the guy in the back of the end zone. We win the game. I'm in Sports Illustrated. It was amazing. It wasn't like everybody in the stand saw this shining moment, right? And I heard other people say he's so lucky because I'd done that when I was in high school type of stuff. But they didn't know about all the hell I had to go through to get to that moment. But that moment, since I practiced and practiced and practiced, and I'd put it in my head a million times of mentally imagining myself doing that, you know, shutting my eyes and the golden play, you catch the last second touchdown, you hit the home run in the World Series. You know, I'd gone through that same exact play 1,000 times. So even though they saw that for the first time from me, I'd done that play 1,000 times. And so that's, again, being at your best when your best is required because of the work I'd done through all this preparation. And there isn't any of the stuff that I've done that hasn't taken the serious hardcore work. And then that's where you start to get the confidence. And that's where you start saying, why not me? If I just put in the work, I'll put myself in the best position to possibly achieve this thing.
I know for Dave, he's always been someone who, if someone's going to tell him no, that makes him push that much harder. Was that kind of your personality growing up too? Like, tell me I can't, I'm going to prove to you I can.
Yeah, I don't know why people do that. You know, why, you know, it's really interesting because if I coached my girls, you know, they're grown up now, but back in the day, I was the coach of everything. And I always looked at all these girls that, you know, I looked at them like, there might be one out of this entire group, and there's the same group as, you know, went from grade to grade to grade. And maybe at best, one of them was going to go on to college, maybe, right? It turned out none of them did, but maybe one, right? And how many of those girls, when they were just young, super young in grade school, were even going to make it on the high school team? Maybe half that number at best, right? So I always went with this philosophy is why not try to make this experience the best experience of their life and try to give them as much confidence by building them up. Even if they're the worst athlete, that was the best hit I've ever seen in volleyball, right? Just something to like, well, and that's what creates, again, it's limiting beliefs on what anybody can do about where they want to go. And that's why I keep going back to this thing about why not me? Why can't you say? And you got to figure out a way to block that noise out because everybody has something to say negatively about most people or their abilities.
Wow, what powerful life lessons, and powerful life lessons always transition to powerful business lessons too.
Yeah.
So tell me, you were in the NFL for 4 years, and then you transitioned into business. What was that transition and that journey like for you?
It was actually 5 years, and it was
5 years,
awful.
okay.
Yeah, but it was awful. I can tell you that, and today they've done a really good job through the Players Trust, which is kind of the NFLPA, wing of really developing a lot of programs where, you want to be a teacher, you want to be a coach, or you want to be a broadcaster, or you want to be in business, or you want to be a financial analyst. They have all these different mentorship programs that are available today that help give these guys a path towards the transition from football into their next phase of life.
Mm-hmm.
And back when I was done, which was roughly 1990, there was nothing that was out there like this. And so I literally went off a cliff. And it's not just the 5 years, but it's also the 5 years from the University of Washington playing major college football.
Mm-hmm.
I played in 2 Rose Bowls, 2 Orange Bowls, or 2 Aloha Bowls and an Orange Bowl, played all the top teams in the country. We were number 1 most of the time. And that takes a tremendous amount of commitment, to maintain that level.
Basically, football was your life for 10 years.
It was
the first 10 years of your adulthood.
It was. And, people said, what was your degree with football, really? And so when it came off that, there was probably a 2-year gap that I just didn't know what to do, like what direction. And one of my life lessons I've learned is action creates reaction. I kept doing is I'd think about something, I'd think about it, and then I'd talk myself out of it, but nothing would ever happen. And even if you take an action and that reaction is you think this thing sucks, you want to be an insurance salesman or, a plumber or whatever it is that you want to do, and that turns out not to be a path, at least you've taken action to say that that's not what I want to do. And I ended up starting this marketing company, which ultimately led into this was going around to a lot of the big corporations around town. Amazon, another big company that was started up there. That I would do a lot of the branding and the various campaigns that they were being launched and this and that, and I do a lot of the identity programs for them. And then somehow or another, I'd heard about this opportunity to go after Starbucks outdoor market umbrellas. So those green umbrellas that you see outside. It took me 2.5 years to get the account. I worked it. I took the same process I took. It was just like when I got benched, for many years at the University of Washington before I got my chance. I just kept chipping, doing all the things I needed to do to win this account. 2.5 years later, I got it. And I had it for 14 years. I produced every single green market outdoor umbrella in North America, South America, and parts of Asia. And I learned, which I implemented an import-export business. We manufactured over in Asia, over in China, and I had some quality control people in Hong Kong, and we route these containers. I didn't know any of this stuff, but I put myself in a position to win. And I kept chipping away at it when most people quit after the first 6 months or 3 months or 2 months, or they said no. And ultimately I got this account, which was worth a lot of money.
I tell people all the time, I don't have any, everybody uses the term superpower now. What's your superpower? I tell people all the time, I don't really have any gifts other than the fact that I don't quit. So maybe that's my superpower. Sounds like you have
that.
Sounds like you have the same. It's done really well for you in life.
Well, let me tell you something. I had 15 different ways when I was in the NFL to quit. In business, we got down. So I start this, I'll give you a business example. We got down to, it was a venture back. Well, at first it was a company that we took in just private money, right? Friends and family. It was a gaming company. And so we invented the term coffee table games, and we actually ended up winning Toy of the Year in 2001 and 2002. So beat out Hasbro, Mattel, and all these guys. But our original investment was $500,000. We had 8 employees, and we were building and making all these different games, and it was fantastic. But we got to the point where we were running out of money. And so we had gone to these various venture capital companies throughout Seattle. We pitched them, and they liked this, but they weren't sure. And everybody was at the time going to these .com things. And then 9/11 happens, right? and the whole world shuts down. And all of a sudden, in a week later, we get 2 calls from 2 venture people up there saying, please come back in, or please come back and we want to talk to you. And they happen to be on the same day, within a couple hours of each other, in the same building, of all things. And they both gave us offers, and they were just like, you know what, times have now officially changed. And we want to back a company that helps people unplug. So again, just being in the right place at the right time and not giving up. We literally had one last payroll to go, and I was gonna have to let everybody go. And this all went down.
Wow.
It was just timing and luck, but we kept hanging in there and making a good product and saying somehow or another, we're gonna figure this out. I don't know how, but keep chipping, and don't quit.
Preparations, right? You just kept preparing for that opportunity that you were confident would come at some point. I'm guessing at some point in your life you prepared, because it sounds like everything you prepared for eventually ended up coming to fruition. Did you have anything in life, like obstacles that you overcame, where you were chipping away, you prepared, and you know what? It just never happened.
Have you ever quit at anything?
Yeah. No, and I think this is important in this whole story, because I don't want my life to seem like it's one big bowl of cherries, butterflies and rainbows, because it's not. I've been through a painful divorce, and that wasn't fun. And I started another. It was an extension of my Starbucks relationship. I started a technology company, and we raised $1.5 million, and I had all these investors. And then when the market crashed in 2008, everybody was running for the high heels and all the money that was lost in the market and everything else. And we hadn't finished our software. We had contracts. We had plenty of contracts that people wanted to use our software, but we couldn't get the software finished. And so net is I had to shut that down. And one of the things that I learned out of life was that my greatest asset is never giving up, and my biggest weakness is never giving up. And so somewhere or another, I've had to figure out through time, like, what that delta is. I came very close on Mount Everest to not coming back home. And so, going back to that same thing I just said, when to just shut it down and when to keep going. I'm glad I kept going for the obvious reasons. I'm sitting here today having summited Mount Everest, but there have been plenty of times, and it was so painful for me to have to shut that company down, which it should have been shut down 6 months before that. But I just, that relentless, never give up thing, I had that. So that's my internal battle that I have to struggle with.
That's interesting that you drew that parallel to your summiting Mount Everest. I mean, I'm not sure that, at least physically and probably mentally too, there's not a bigger obstacle to overcome than that, is there? Not that I know of, I can think of, at least the top of my head. And you mentioned that you almost didn't come home from that. What was that experience like for you?
Well, I mean, I guess it's what led up to that, which all contributed towards that day, May 23rd. And, we had started off on the morning, about 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, from base camp, 17,500 feet, which I've been living at for 2 months, and made it through the Kumeya's Fall. And we had projected that we were going to go for the summit on the 20th, because you get up to a certain camps and you stay there and you rest and you reset, and then you keep advancing your way up the mountain. It's not all done in one swoop. And when we got up to Camp 3, which is no place anybody wants to get stuck, we got stuck there for 3 days because we were right in the middle of a hardcore hurricane, or a cyclone, which is that side of the world's version of a hurricane. So, heavy snow, heavy winds, and you're on a 45-degree slope. And so if you can imagine being in your tent for 3 days, in your sleeping bag, you're not moving, you're trapped, you can't go anywhere, you're on this ice face. It was terrifying. It was awful. And I also didn't eat that much. So then the morning of the 22nd, we said, let's try to get above this storm and climb above it, which we did. And we came into high camp, 26,500 feet. And I still hadn't really eaten in a couple of days. They have this freeze-dried stuff that they feed you. My system just didn't respond to it. And so ultimately, we ended getting up at midnight. Our tent was late, being woken up, and that's a whole nother story. So it was kind of let's go. And all the Sherpa guys were out there waiting for us. And so we had about 20 minutes to get it going and, go for the hardest climb of your life, which is not the proper amount of time that you go. And when I got out of the tent, the winds were blowing 45 to 50 miles per hour. There's all these icicles. And so I ended up getting snow blind in my left eye. And then off you go. And as you're making your way up the initial phase, this is kind of where all the in the thin air stuff went down, where all these people died and lost limbs and fingers and death, their lives and everything else. And so you go up the triangular face to the balcony and then take a left there and go up the South Summit. And I was in last place. I was not feeling right. Everybody passed me. It just wasn't my normal. I had no energy. I hadn't eaten in 3 days. And then I finally get to the top, and in doing so, you're stepping over dead bodies. And that's a, crazy experience, especially one of those guys was my tent mate from Antarctica in 2019.
Wow.
Don Cash. And, mentally just trying to hold it together and just one more step, and one more step, and one more step, and not giving up, and just trying to have micro goals versus trying to get to the top. Just give me 10 more feet. And ultimately that is why I was coming now back down the mountains. I'd already been into it for 9 hours. I was literally the last guy standing on top of the world on May 23rd. My Sherpa starts to head down, and I was literally the last guy to come off. And as we got down, I ended up running out of oxygen. And so I was hungry. I was blind in my left eye. It made it really hard for me to hook into the ropes that were tied to the mountain. And now I ran out of oxygen. So now I'm sliding my butt trying to get down. And so this whole time I'm just like, am I gonna make this thing? And then I started shifting that mindset to like, today is not the day that Mark dies. All at the same time, the plan had been to go climb Mount Everest, come down to Camp 4, 26.5, jump in my tent for a couple hours, and then go up the other side and climb the fourth highest mountain in the world, called Lhotse. And as I was coming down, I knew that if I tried to take that on, I was going to be one of those statistics on the mountain. And my daughters very much came into my mind about what's the most important thing. Amelia, my other daughter, Claudette, and I was just like, you know what, records and all this other stuff don't matter at this point. My life matters, and getting back to the people I love is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that you had been, I guess, to Mount Everest before in 2019. So was this not the only time that you had attempted Mount Everest?
No, I wasn't on. I was in Don Cash, who I referenced in 2020, 2019. We were in Antarctica climbing a mountain down there.
Oh, okay.
3 months later, he had gone to Mount Everest to climb. He was trying to knock all these things off really quick. And I had retreated with the plan of going the following year in 2020. And of course, in March of 2020, when this last year I left in the end of March, in 2020 of March, the whole world shut down. And so that pushed me out a year. He had died though. There's this famous picture of all these guys, super long lines going up to the summit. And Don had gone to the summit, raised his hand in the air, and then fell over and died right there. So,
wow.
Obviously very tragic. And, once there's a dead body on top of Mount Everest, it's so steep, it's so dangerous. You can't put your own life in danger by trying to haul somebody down. It's impossible. So what you have is a bunch of dead bodies laying, up there on top of Mount Everest.
That are frozen.
They're frozen. Yeah.
Wow. So do you feel like it was worth it?
Of course.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what.
From my perspective, I'm like, you're crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. I was very fortunate. The NFL came knocking on my door in January, and they wanted to do a film on this. They didn't even know what the story was going to be, but they just wanted to capture this story somehow. And that was kind of the beauty of this, because at the time when they first came over here in February, their crew, they were filming me training and talking to some other people, but the story was still yet to be told. They didn't know about my daughter and her epilepsy, and they didn't know about the struggles I was about to go through or I'd been through in my past life and things like that. And so the movie is now out for everybody to see. They showed it on the NFL Total Access channel about 2 weeks ago. We're on mid-October here, but if anybody wants to see that film, it's a 30-minute documentary. It's on YouTube called Searching for the Summit. You can watch that. It's pretty intense. Yeah. So you've got
I'll make sure to link it in the show notes.
Yeah, no, it's really, they did, the NFL does an amazing job of storytelling. And this story that I was so proud of, it's not another climbing story. It's about a story about a guy who's going through a bad patch and got healed in the mountains and was able to turn around and help his daughter with her epilepsy and her struggles. And somehow or another in there, I ended up climbing Mount Everest. So it's really cool that, in my opinion, the way that they actually shared that story.
Yeah, I'm not sure that there's a better company out there, and I'm an NFL or football person, so I'm skewed a little bit, but I'm not sure there's a better company out there that does better documentaries than the NFL. They are next level, and most people think they're about football, and most of them aren't. It's well done. I can't wait to check that out.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm not really familiar with it. You said you were snow blind. Do you have any like lasting damage to your eye, or is that just like a temporary damage where you get hit by snow? I'm not familiar with that. What does that mean?
It's a really good question. And what it means is that when there are some conditions, when you're that high, which in my case, 29 to 35 feet, you're at a third of the oxygen level that we are here down at sea level. And either through the sun, because you don't have the right kind of eyewear, or in my situation, I had ice particles slice my eye open. My whole face actually looked like the left side of my face looked like a big sunburn because I've just got ripped with all the snow particles coming across. It normally lasts anywhere from 24 to 72 hours. And it's just it's a blur. You can't see out of your eye. I mean, it's just a blur. It's like if you took a white piece of paper and put it over your left eye, that's what you're looking at.
Wow.
And so absolutely, it's debilitating in many different ways because it's the irritation of your eye, and now you're playing with that. And when you're mountain climbing and doing something that physical, it took me 18 hours to go up and come back down. Think about that. And when you're climbing and you're in those situations, it's all about energy conservation. And there's all these different little nuances of taking your gloves off, putting on a big puffy jacket when you sit down, having nutrition. There's all these little tiny tricks that they all add up in terms of what kind of summit day or what kind of type of climbing experience that you're actually going to have. And so when you can't see, and I've got this 3-foot cord hanging from my belt with a carabiner on the end. I'm trying to click into these fixed lines, which are these 100-foot lines anchored by ice screws, and then they're in all the way up the mountain. So you're constantly clipping in, clipping out, and that's what saves your life. If you fall, that's your lifeline. And as you get higher up, there's a thing called the Hillary Step. I was going over the Hillary Step. There's like 5 of these lines. And half of them are afraid because they've been there since 2012 or 13 or whatever. And so making sure that you're tying into the right. And my Sherpa, who was with me, wasn't really any kind of help. He couldn't understand English. And so I kept saying snowblind, snowblind. And he thought I was just like, hey, everything's great. And so, right. So there was just no communication. Like he had no idea what I was going through, having not eaten and snowblind, and then ultimately running out of O's, coming down the mountain.
That's crazy.
What a crazy story. Listen, I want to ask you a couple last things before we let you go today. One of them is, I know you have a podcast, Finding Your Summit podcast. My understanding is you've been doing that quite a while. Can you tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So it's Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. And, I guess I named it that because I was trying to find my summit, and I was going through my adversity, and I was trying to find my way. And I'll tell you something, the beautiful part about that podcast is that it's a constant reminder to me about remaining humble and remaining kind. And that if you think you have something that you're going through and it's a rough patch, I can guarantee you, through the people I talk to and through now literally going around the globe and being in these different cultures, that there's somebody out there who has it worse than you. I guarantee you that. And I've met I can tell you some stories that would blow your mind. And so when I'm talking to them and asking them hard questions and talking about this adversity and how they got through it, it's really helped me like center my life in a lot of different ways. So it's been a total blessing. And I've just happened to be fortunate that a lot of people like to listen to these stories too. And so right now I just, keep marching and keep producing these stories and trying to find these folks with some amazing amazing stories, that need to be told.
Wow. That's fantastic. I am definitely going to have to check out your
Yeah.
podcast.
How motivational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Listen, before we let you go today, I mentioned before we jumped online and started recording that this is primarily a small business podcast, meaning most, if not all, of the people listening to this are small business owners, or some of them are wanting to be business owners in the near future. You have a unbelievable background and experience in, I know you mentioned small business, but obviously larger businesses, overcoming adversity, things like that I would describe almost next level in a lot of ways. If you were sitting in a room with a small business owner that had maybe been in the business a couple years, and I don't know that the business is relevant, if they're looking for you for guidance, someone that's been around the block, overcome a lot of great obstacles in your life, what's a few things you would give them as far as 5 minutes of mentorship kind of thing?
One of the things that it's been really helpful for me in all aspects of my life, from my relationships to my business, to climbing mountains, to playing in the NFL, to playing college football, was what my coach taught me back in the day, Don James. He would later become a very famous Hall of Fame coach. He's now since passed, but he really had turned me on to John Wooden's pyramid of success. So what that is at the end of the day is your roadmap to life and your roadmap to success and things that you want to do. And in the football sense, there was getting bigger, faster, stronger, getting good grades, but there's 25 different individual and team goals that you need to ascend to hit the championship. And everybody has a different definition of what that championship is. But if you don't think big, you'll never do things that are big, right? We called them BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals. Okay. And so at the very top of the rung in John Wooden's version, right? Again, to the business owner, to Mark, I plucked these things that John had put in there and I put in my own things, my own goals. What am I trying to do? And at the very top is called competitive greatness. And competitive greatness at the end of the day is that championship. But in order to get that championship, you have to love the process. The flipping 7 summits took me not almost 10 years to climb 7 mountains. Right. Yeah. Because these different things at Denali up in Alaska in 2017, we ran into -80-degree weather. That was not fun, but I had to come back and do all that again. Right. And so it's staying with the process. And so many people that I see, if you apply your roadmap, then you go to, okay, how am I going to get there? And the first thing is stepping into the fear and doing things that you don't think are possible. Right. So laying that out there and say, I'm going to go for this. Which needs to be the second thing is do it with daily discipline. And that covers a whole, there's no substitute for hard work. Hard things are hard. And that's the reason why they call them hard work. And it's not easy work, it's hard work. And it's a separation that you can create between just average and great. And I've heard this before. I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but good is the enemy of great. Because people just are satisfied to be good enough and not great enough, right? And so I've always tried to set my standards, at that level. And then the last one, so the first one is step into the fear. The second one is do it with daily discipline. And the last one, and this is where you find a separation of so many people. You see this New Year's resolutions, December, you're writing all your goals down, whatever that might be. And then by March, people quit. And that is commit to those goals, commit to the process, commit that it might take as long as it's going to take to actually get you to where you want to go. But if you have a vision, there's going to be obstacles in the way, you go around those. It's just a detour. Keep your eye on the ball. Great things can happen.
Wow.
I love that. I love your positivity.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
To everyone listening and watching right now, you need to rewind that and check that out again. That's good stuff right there. And I'll tell you, Mark, I have achieved nowhere near the level of success you have, but I've achieved a little bit, especially compared to where I started. And if I could point to one thing, I appreciate you pulling that out of my memory. If I could point to one thing, it was that I was never going to quit. I was never going to stop. And I, quite frankly, am still never going to stop, much to my wife's dismay sometimes. But So I appreciate you bringing that up because I think that's a really powerful thing when you make that commitment and you're not going to stop until you achieve your goals. And then in my case, I found multiple times, that my goals superseded what I perceived as my ceiling in life. I would find a ceiling and I would shatter that ceiling, and all of a sudden I'd look around and go, huh, maybe that wasn't my ceiling after all.
I need a new goal.
And then I'd look for a new ceiling, and my wife would go, well, can't we just chill?
Can we just enjoy this level for a little bit?
I think one of the other things, though, that this applies to me, right? So if it applies to you, it does. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I really try not to get into this whole idea of trying to compare myself to other people's situation, because you'll never win that, right? Because again, there's always going to be, you're going to be ahead of some and behind many.
Yep.
And that's just the way life is. And, I was never destined to be a Hall of Fame wide receiver. Could I have been in the right situation? I don't know, but I wasn't. That's the bottom line. And so me trying to compare myself to Jerry Rice, we came out in the same year, is stupid. I did the best that I possibly could based on the talent that I nurtured and got to the highest level. And again, that's in the NFL. And so that's something different, but in business too, some of these businesses that I did, I only got to a certain cap, right? I didn't go as far as many other businesses in Seattle, ever went. And that was my potential. But I lived through that. And I just tried to not get caught up in what they're doing. Just how can I improve? How can I be the best version of myself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the key to not comparing yourself to others, is just comparing yourself to, I always say I want to be better tomorrow than I was yesterday. And that's the only thing I compare myself to.
To yourself.
That's a pretty good barometer.
Are you constantly improving? Though I will throw out there, how many of those Hall of Famers have climbed Mount Everest?
0.
Jerry Rice hadn't done that.
Listen to that, Jerry Rice.
Mark, this has been fantastic, my friend. And I know you're a super busy guy, and we got to let you go. Before we do, how can people get in contact with you, reach out to you? And if you'd like, I know that you're raising money for Higher Ground, which is Epilepsy Foundation, is something that you're very passionate about because of your daughter. If people want to make a donation, if they've gotten a lot, and guys, my audience, if you're listening to this and you've gotten even one little nugget of value out of this today, do me a favor and go there and just make a really small donation, because obviously this is something that's very passionate to Mark. He's a busy guy. He took a time out of his day to share this lessons and this wisdom with us. So do that if you could. But Mark, how can people get in touch with you and tell us about Higher Ground real quick?
It's really simple. You can just go to my website, and the movie link is there, and the philanthropy tab is there, which goes directly to Higher Ground. All the podcasts, everything is captured at markpattisonnfl.com, markpattisonnfl.com. I'm all over Google, so you can find me easily there. And Higher Ground is just an adaptive athlete program that we raise quite a bit of money for people to come and not just put money towards a cause to solve a disease. I know we're dealing with the coronavirus right now, so it's not about that. It's about bringing people in so they can go out in nature. I live here in Sun Valley, Idaho, and they can ski, and they can river raft, and they can fly fish, and they can hike, and they can mountain bike, and they can do all that kind of stuff. And it gives them empowerment, and through that empowerment gives confidence, and through that confidence is I can do anything. And that's the whole key. And that's the reason why there's such great results for so many people that have come here and participated in these programs.
Yeah. Wow. Fantastic. Well, we will definitely, Carla mentioned a minute ago, we will definitely put your website in the show notes to make sure we get the right spelling and everything. So guys, go click on that, check it out, make a donation if you can. Listen, Mark, I feel like you're my friend now because I know you pretty well. I hope it's okay. But I always say I can't have too many friends in this world. And I know my wife, Carla, feels the same. So thank you for taking the time out of your day to share this information. We will take it as our personal responsibility and obligation to get it out to as many people as we can to try to inspire them to chase their best version of themselves. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. You are an awesome man.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You guys are a great host, and really enjoyed this chat. And, we're all trying to get to some destination and just becoming the best version of yourself. And so I'm still trying now. I'm on this What's Next program. So anyways, we're all there. And thank you. So never stop. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you got it. All right. Take care, my friend.
Okay.
Hi, thank you.
All right, everyone. Bye-bye. That's another great episode of the Laundromat Millionaire Show. We will catch you next time for another great episode. Take care.